getting my trash cans out of the shot. People are gonna see it.
Are you in your yard?
I'm in my yard, yeah.
Nice. So Nathan, I want to say thank you for making time to chat with me today, as we're going to take a deep dive into the Ease and Grace album that was released in 2021, and which was my personal favorite album, reggae album of the year.
Awesome.
It was the album that I listened to most, according to my Spotify statistics, which is my chief streaming platform. And it doesn't surprise me, Nathan, because I listened to this album a ton, especially when I was like out, like taking long bike rides where it was really intentional listening, you know, where I had no distractions. It wasn't in the background. It was like me and my headphones and Iya Terra, you know, and so it really is a great way to absorb music and really, you know, allowed me to listen to the messages. There's so many messages in this album, and that's why I was so eager to talk to you and kind of, you know, get to the bottom of the creativity and the thinking behind it. And to that end, I'd like to say thank you for your willingness to sort of pull back the curtain a little bit and to share with listeners or viewers, you know, your thought process and your intentions behind a lot of the messages in the album, because some artists may be reluctant to do so, and they sort of just like want the art to speak for itself as it is. But so anyway, what are your thoughts on that? And did you have any hesitation or?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate that, man. That's very humbling to hear. It was your #1 album of the year. I always like put such a heavy weight on what my #1 album of the year is. I don't really keep track, you know, but then every year you get the Spotify Wrapped, and I'm like, holy shit, I listen to that record the most, huh? So I know what it's like to love a record. So it still blows my mind that there's people out there that our album was their #1. So thanks for that, man. I'm glad that you like it, and it makes me miss riding my bike and intentionally listening too. I find that I'm more of a runner. I run these days, and sometimes I'll put on an album to intentionally listen, and some grab me, and then sometimes the music fades into the background, and I'm just like, "Fuck, this sucks. I want to go home," you know. But yeah, it makes me miss that, man. But yeah, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. And yeah, I don't really have any qualms about pulling back the curtain at all. You know, throughout the pandemic and stuff, I got really into live streaming and stuff. So I have a Twitch channel where like people can come on, and I kind of just shoot the shit all the time, and you know, I'll answer questions, I'll write music, I'll hang out. So I don't think I'm one of those guys that's like too hard to get a hold of, I guess, or I don't know the proper words, but I mean, people can take a step into my mind anytime when I go live on Twitch, and I'm literally just hanging out like with my cats and shit and making music. And as I talked to a good buddy, yeah, I'm a pretty open guy, you know. And I don't know, I appreciate anyone who wants to know. It's awesome.
So let's dig into it, because I know we have a limited amount of time, can't be hanging out all night long. So let's start off with just the themes of the album. Two themes that run through the album, most evidently to me, are gratitude and humility, which I think often, you know, run hand in hand. I was hoping you could speak to the importance of these traits in your eyes.
Yeah, man. So it kind of all goes back to like when we first started the band, really, because those have been a common thread throughout our entire catalog, and all of it was seriously unintentional, you know. When we started up the group, we were looking for a singer because I had sang in bands and stuff, but I was always into like metal and stuff. So we would have a main guy screaming, and then I would just be singing choruses, things like that, you know? So I didn't really have the confidence in my voice. So we would look for singers, and we looked for a singer for maybe 3-4 months when we first started. And I just decided I was going to do it. You know, no one was really working out. There was a lot of flakes out there, obviously. And, you know, the guys that were willing to do it, we didn't really vibe with, or, you know, stuff like that. So I just started singing, man. And obviously with that comes like, okay, now I have to be the one to write the lyrics too, you know? And I just started writing. A lot of the stuff from what I was hearing in the music I was influenced by at the time, a lot of reggae music, you know, when we first started this band, was like so deep into the reggae rabbit hole back in the day. And that's a very common theme in a lot of reggae music, is gratitude and humility, and, you know, some of the more political stuff that's on the album too, and that's been throughout our albums and things like that. So it definitely took a lot of it from that. It's always kind of been involved in our music and entrenched in our music, but there's another layer to it too. And, you know, I was raised by a single mother, and things were always hard, you know, but she always stayed positive and always kind of like tried to instill that in me. So a lot of the stuff, and you know, a lot of my songs, I use like one-liners or like euphemisms, you know. I think a lot of songwriters do, you know, you hear somebody throw something around like better luck tomorrow or whatever it is, whatever kind of euphemism, and you kind of take that and stretch it out into a song and expound upon that idea, you know. So like she laced me up with all sorts of euphemisms like that growing up, you know. You never know what tomorrow brings, and you know, just that constant idea of no matter how tough it gets, to be grateful. And that's always been a part of my music.
Excellent. Cool. So,
Yeah.
you know, another and along those lines, another theme that, you know, certainly comes through often is it's a call to a less materialist, like a less material and a more spiritual way of life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people confuse like spirituality with religion. So for
Yeah.
someone who would equate those two, spirituality and religion, you know, how would you define the difference?
Yeah, this was one of the more intriguing questions to me. To be honest, man, just to kind of like add a forward onto the deeper questions like this, I don't know shit about shit. You know what I mean? And a lot of when you when you're a singer, a lot of people look to you for guidance and answers and stuff like that. And that was like a whole thing of it was like a whole baggage that I never expected when just, you know, starting out trying to write tunes and stuff like that. But you grow into it and you step into it and you learn how to deal with it in a way that's like truly authentic to yourself and stuff like that. But I get a lot of I don't want to say a lot, but I get some lost souls, you know, that reach out to me, and they're in need of some kind of spiritual medicine or some kind of you know, like a mentor or something like that. And you know, people can be in some really dark places and reach out to me and be like, man, like this lyric that that you said, you know, like what's your relationship with God, and what's this? And you know, I always kind of have to like take a step back and realize that that intention is so like it's such a powerful thing, you know. And if you write about that, people are going to reach out to you for that. And you know, that's one of the things where it's like it's just my personal experience and stuff like that. Right off the bat, like I'm not a religious person. I've always been more of a spiritual person, although that word kind of gets a little bit mumbo jumboed up these days. You know, it means so many things, but you know, for right or for wrong, whatever it is. I just I don't know if I could define the difference between religion or spirituality. I just am living my experience, and am trying to be a good person and trying to learn from mistakes that I've made in the past and trying to put good out there into the world in hopes that, you know, some good comes back, and we kind of level up the quality of everybody's life just by giving kindness and being the person that we would want to be in the world, you know.
Absolutely. And you certainly do that through your music, and I'm sure through your personal interactions as well. But yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things about this album is that it's so uplifting. And it made it easy to listen to as heavily as I did and will continue to do so. Let's get in a little bit to the song by song deep dive that I was hoping to do.
Awesome, man.
Starting off with the title track, Ease and Grace. It's an uplifting song that expresses gratitude for your place in life, including all that has entailed, both the good and the bad. In the song, you mentioned that you had been questioning your faith in the divine, but now you've gained new insight into the workings of the universe. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about a few things. First, I'm gonna actually rip off these questions, and then you can just answer them. And if you forget
Yeah,
them,
man.
circle back. But
Totally.
first, I'm wondering if you equate like do you equate the divine with the universe, or are they separate entities to you? That's the first question.
Okay. All right.
Secondly, I was wondering if you, and this is probably an easy question. Secondly, I was wondering if you had like some sort of an epiphany, or if it was more like new insight that developed gradually over time. And the last thing I was curious is, like, you make reference in the song to the process. So I was
Yeah.
hoping you could expand a little bit about what the process means to you. So first part of the question was more about, the workings of the universe.
Yeah. So the first question was, do I consider the divine and the universe to be two separate entities? And the definite answer to that is no. Based on the fact that, you know, I don't have any concrete hard lines in my life of any kind of spiritual plan that I follow, as I mentioned, you know. The whole theme of that song was kind of you know, it does really drive home the point of, you know, the humility and the gratitude for the good and the bad. And that's why it was like I felt that it was strong enough to be a title track for the record, because it in a sense kind of encapsulates what the band stands for, you know, and it's got the rocking guitar riff, and it's kind of like that song is very Iya Terra. There's certain songs that I write and I'm like, oh, this one is just like Aya's bread and butter, you know. It's got a riff, it's got a catchy chorus, it's big.
Signature sound, yeah.
Yeah, and not all of them are like that, you know. I've always had like a really eclectic way of writing, and I've struggled with that and being like, is it too much? Because sometimes I want to do like a sad, slow song, and sometimes I want to do like an in-your-face heavy song. And I know that some bands find one sound and stick to it, but that we've never really been that kind of band. And I'm not saying that like that's the better way. It's just that's, you know, how stuff comes out. But to your question, so no, I don't equate them as two different things. I think it's all part of the grand experience that I am not able to really put into words. You know what I mean? Is that you look back and you see that everything kind of worked out as it should, you know, and a reminder that you're always on the right path, even when it's shitty. There was no big epiphany or something like that. It was almost like a retrospect kind of thing of being like, you know, looking back on the years where there was turmoil or there was some rough shit going down. And, you know, and that's what you're talking about, the process, because it's not always beautiful, you know, and just being like it's kind of like because I wrote those lyrics in a car. I was driving and I was kind of thinking about the past and being like, damn, like I'm just really grateful for how it works out. And it was kind of like a message to myself to like, don't doubt the process, don't doubt the universe, because you know, through the years, through everything, it's all worked out. And I'm definitely grateful for where it's put me now, you know?
Excellent. Thank you. So
yeah.
And you know what, I'm not gonna go in order of the songs I was going to, but I'm thinking like the other song that really like is sort of like relates to that is Wiser Now.
Yeah.
It's a similar theme. It makes what I want to know about Wiser Now is that it makes reference to the next test. So I was wondering if you could give some examples of tests that we humans experience and why you choose to call them tests, like rather than say obstacles or challenges. So in other words, like when you use the word test, you know, that alludes to like some sort of a gauge rather than just a problem that's occurred. So I want to know is, you know, who do you think is doing the testing and for what purpose?
I don't know if I have an answer to who I think is doing the testing. I think it's just kind of, you know, part of life is we stress ourselves out and we worry so much about, you know, the next big thing that's going on and, oh, how am I ever going to get through this? And, you know, you get through it, sometimes unscathed, sometimes pretty battered, but, you know, you get through it and things level out for a while, but there's always going to be more, and that's part of life. You know what I mean? It's like the Buddha says is like life is suffering. So like coming to terms with something like that, you know what I mean? It's part of life. And that's like, you know, all goes back to that common thread of just being grateful for the good and the bad, you know? Tune like Wiser Now.
I was going to say the good and the bad is what contributes to us being humans and who we are as people, you know?
Yeah.
So no one's going to have the perfect life, you know, with no problems or obstacles. I mean, it's just the nature of life. And so you have to kind of embrace that. And it's how you deal with those challenges, those tests,
totally,
that really, you know, make you who you are.
Those songs are definitely in the same vein. You know what I mean? It's like the message, like, how do you even really define like the message in both those songs? They're kind of both just about going through the process of life and learning from mistakes and looking back and being grateful for the right now and staying hopeful for the future. You know what I mean? It's funny because like sometimes I'll write a song and that the intention isn't really set, or like you start off with the first sentence and then it rolls from there, you know? And like the first line of that song was "Been a while since I sat down." And I wrote that song in between, we were on a tour that was 2 legs and we came home for a week, and I just like had the inspiration for like that melody. And that was the first line that came out. And it was like, "Been a while since I sat down." And the rest of it just kind of flowed, you know. It was never really came out as like, I'm going to write the song about, you know, growing and learning from mistakes and things like that. But that's kind of what it all comes down to in the end, you know.
I'll tell you, Nathan, those songs, you know, Wiser Now, a lot of the songs on this album, and especially Wiser Now, I get goosebumps, you know, when I listen to them. Like when the message resonates with me, there's something that happens that it's hard to put into words, except that like goosebumps is like the physical manifestation.
Well, thanks, man. I think that's why they're relatable, is because like I'm not special for being able to, you know, that's the wrong way to say it, but I don't know something that other people don't know. You know what I mean? It's like we're all going through a journey and we're all kind of you know, religious, not religious, whatever, we're all still just learning from this experience, you know what I mean? And I just have the ability to like put it into a song, but some people have ability to like build a house, you know, or like do insane athletic ability, you know, and everybody's got these different things, but essentially we're all going through this, you know, not the same process, but we're all living and we're all learning, you know? So I get it, man. And I think that's why it hits home to people. And, you know, that's why I don't blame someone if they're like, hey, Nate, like, can you give me some guidance or some advice? And I'm just like, dude, like, I'm just the one that's able to like put it onto paper, but I'm feeling like similar things to what you're feeling, you know?
So you're saying that you're not an enlightened guru that
Far from it, bro. Far fucking from it, you know?
I'm surprised. I like after listening to this album, I thought perhaps you might be, but no, I'm teasing.
Just go back and listen to our first song ever. It's about sex. So like, just know, use that as a reference and be like, oh, this guy is just a guy who writes songs. You know what I mean?
Nothing wrong with that. It's part of life too. So I am curious about one lyric in the song.
Yeah.
I am closer to the call of oneness. That really stood out to me. So I was curious, like, what you were thinking when you wrote that. What if you can elaborate on that at all?
Brutally honest here. It rhymed.
Okay, fair enough. Again, that's the thing. When you peel back the curtain, you find out sometimes there's not always all this significance behind every word in the album. That's just like me obsessing over it, you know.
But I appreciate that, man. It takes a deep thought, and like it goes. You know, the main theme of the song is growing. You know what I mean? It's wiser now. So it's like you can look at it in the sense of, you know, you're closer to where you want to be, you know what I mean? Like when I think of the word oneness, it's kind of like it's a tranquil thing. It's almost like a zen, you know what I mean? Like if you can be one with yourself, you're sorting out some of the bullshit that's going on in your life or in your own mind, and getting closer to like the oneness with yourself, you know what I mean? And that's why it's like that lyric, you know, I'm brainstorming through all these rhymes and I'm like, call of oneness. I'm like, that it definitely fit with the vibe of the song, you know?
You know, and it also sort of ties into, in a way, like Rastafarian theology and things like that, with I and oneness and unity and einity. You know, it's a theme that runs through reggae music ever since reggae music was embraced by Rastafari as a vehicle to spread, you know, their messaging. So, you know, I sort of interpreted it as that. One of my favorite songs, I'm going to say that a lot probably, but Price You'll Pay. That song is like, it's a righteous song.
Thanks,
and
man.
you know, I just love how it, you know, denounces materialism and things like that. Denounces greed and materialism, I should say. But for a while, I was kind of confused by the chorus, because
there's a way to hear it. I'm sorry to interrupt. There's like this song. I was so excited about this question because when I wrote that chorus, there's kind of two ways to hear it. You know what I mean? And like, that's common with a lot of music, but I didn't realize that when I wrote it, and I almost feel like the message in the song gets misconstrued, you know? Like I've been sent some YouTube comments that are like, oh man, like you saying, take your money away. Like you don't need it, bro. Like, I bet it costs money to make this song. And I'm just like, damn, like when I wrote that song, like if you look at it in the way that I wrote it, where it was like, you can take all mine away, but your soul is the price you'll pay, you know? And it's definitely about greed as opposed to denouncing money. Like, I'm giving up my earthly possessions, you can take them all. Like, that's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. For so long, I was like, I was wondering about that. I'm like, well, he's saying, you know, money is the root of all evil. You could take mine away, but your price is the soul you'll pay. So like, if if money's the root of evil and you're taking money, like I'm just using like logic, but then all of a sudden, like on the 50th time I heard it, it just hit me differently. And I was like, oh, he's not talking about the money. He's talking about the taking away of the money.
100%. It's, you know, it's so funny, man, because it's supposed to be read as like one line all the way through, but the way that I sing it almost separates it, like there's a comma in there or something like that. But it's supposed to be, you know, you like, it's the same way as like, you can touch the fire, but you're going to get burned. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a carrying on. You have to, you can't separate the two, you know? And it's been a funny thing, man. And I haven't really had the chance to talk about this on like a podcast or anything like that. And that's why I was happy about this question, because, you know, like, and then when you write something and then there's like these weird interpretations of it, you're like it makes me a little bit uncomfortable, you know, because I'm like, damn, that's not how I intended it. And I had a really close friend of mine the other day on New Year's, like, ask me a profound question that I didn't know the answer to. And he said, you know, what if you wrote a song where you were just singing about one thing, you know, and it was, you know, so just say you're singing about a party or whatever, and then like a hate group latches onto that song and like that's their fucking anthem, and that was never your intention. Like, what would you do? And I was just like,
Great question.
I was like, I have no idea, you know. Like, obviously you have to speak out and things like that, but I'm just like, it's like that, but in a microcosm for all music, because like people can take one person, it doesn't have to be a hate group, but one person can take that song and turn it into their own meaning, and you know, that is what it is. That's part of life. But this song, definitely I experienced a little bit of that, you know, because and then the thing is too, is like there's 3 singers on the song, so not only does the listener have 3 interpretations, but even the song's message itself, when it was passed on to Nick Sakakis, my guitarist, and Steve from Tribal Seeds, like they all also had their own interpretations of that song. And just to kind of deep dive into this song, like what I was writing it about is we were just on the turning point. You know, most of these songs, the way an album is it works is the songs are pretty old by the time they actually make it to you know, the general public. Is, you know, you wrote them maybe a year or 2 years ago, then you spent time recording them, and then you release them. We were going through kind of a turning point where, like, for the first time ever, the band was making any money, like even just enough to like sustain the band itself, where we were like, oh, we don't have to come out of pocket anymore to like go on tour, you know, things like that. And there's like, I love all my guys and everything, but there is an energy behind when money gets involved. Like, you have to very carefully navigate situations and circumstances to make sure that no one gets ripped off, and no, you know, you have to like really put intention into like being fair and being sincere about what you're going to do with any kind of money, especially when it's a group effort. And I kind of was just like hit with that harsh reality, you know, for the first time. And, you know, I look back and I'm like, thank God, you know, I feel like we navigated it well, you know. And so, but it was definitely just going through that thing and being like, damn, like there is people out there that are looking to burn you, you know, there is definitely people looking to burn you. And my portion of the song, you know, the first verse is all about keeping the ones that you truly trust close to you, and kind of just keeping a watchful eye out for those who may be trying to take advantage or something like that, you know what I mean? And but then, you know, when it gets passed on to a different singer, they're talking about like more of a global money issue, you know, corrupt governments and corporations and things
Right.
like that, which wasn't why I wrote the song, but it's in the same vein. It's about money and greed, and so mine was more of a personal thing, and then the song also got taken into like a world thing, you know.
Right, and that I mean, that happens. And then like you said, Steve from Tribal Seeds, I mean, Tribal Seeds is always singing against the machine, you know. And
Yeah,
so I thought that was a great choice for a collaborator on that song.
he was
uh
perfect fit, man. He killed it too.
he sure did. And
Yeah,
when he comes in with his verse, again, those chills, those goosebumps come into play
it was
for me.
awesome, man. When I first got his verse back, I was like, yes, that's, you know, that was a long time dream for us too, man. We've been Tribal Seeds fans since the very start of this band. When we were like little 20-year-old kids, Tribal Seeds was the guys, you know.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a while. There's a line in the song that I wanted to just chat about for a moment. First to leave when your well runs low.
Yeah,
And to me, I sort of like drew a parallel to, you know, this time, like like first with our political, with our government, you know, first with Trump, and then with the pandemic. Like, obviously everybody knows, like, our society right now is very divisive, and
it's
it's
a fucking
exactly,
mess, man.
it really is. It's very saddening to me, and it's
Yeah,
of course exacerbated by social media. But I feel like a lot of the approach to the pandemic, whether it be like wearing a mask or getting vaccinated, like everyone like has their reasons for maybe not doing those things, and some of their reasons may be good, but I think what often gets lost or overlooked is that when you're wearing a mask or you're getting vaccinated, it's not all about you. It's also about protecting others. And I feel like, you know, when you say first to leave when your well runs low, it kind of alludes to that me first mentality, where I'm just going to do what's right for me. Is that, do you like, you know, am I on point with that interpretation, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
I'd probably say no, you know. I'd kindly say no. It was, you know, and this tune was definitely more centered around towards money and things like that, you know. And it was kind of going back to that point of like, be with the ones who ride with you, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whatever, you know. Look out for the people that are trying to take advantage of what you have and things like that.
I got you.
Yeah, but I mean that is definitely a sincere issue, you know, is we have to there's a fine line to walk, man, because the part of self-love is doing what's right for yourself. You know what I mean? You definitely have to, you can't undervalue yourself. But obviously kindness is such an important thing, you know, and looking out for your fellow man, whatever way you see fit is most important.
That's true. And but I also think it's kind of cool that like here you wrote a song that was really keeping in mind, or you were thinking of like a personal issue.
Yeah,
Yet like here's a listener that's like making these like grand like things that I think like you're making this grand statement about like society. And you know, that's the beautiful thing about music, right? Is that it is like, you know, open to interpretation from the listener.
totally,
And so when you
totally.
write a song, you probably, you know, you don't always know like how it could be construed or how it could impact people.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's really crazy.
So the next song on the album is Get What You Give. And I love this song so much. It's a message of unity and gratitude. It's another uplifting song. I love the brass. This song really has, I feel like it has more of an old school roots sound, and it's not a typical Iya Terra
It's
sound. I think
not.
you know, yeah. And so I'm curious, you know, who played the horns and why you chose to include them in this track, and maybe not on any others as well.
Yeah, love that, man. You have a really keen ear. Do you play music at all?
I don't, but I listen to reggae a lot. I've been listening
You're a
to reggae
music
for a long
lover.
time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's great to hear because you know in music terms, it's not an Iya Terra song, and the main thing about that, and that's why I think it's cool that you picked up on it is, um, so like with Iya Terra, we typically play in a minor key, which is like more melancholy or like harsher, like kind of you can make it sound mad, sound sad, like in that kind of vein. And then this song is in a major key, which is like very happy and uplifting, you know. So with this one, honestly, it was a challenge to myself to be like, yo, like I want to write something in a major, you know what I mean? Because it's like this uplifting thing, and we don't really have many of those throughout our catalog. There might be like five, and most of them were like a challenge to ourselves of like, yo, let's try and do a major, you know what I mean? So I think just by the nature, it's different than most Iya Terra songs. And it's using what we call a 2-2 progression because it's, you know, two times on a G major, two times on an A major, which is like a common roots progression. You know, you hear like so many like famous reggae songs that have that chord progression in different keys and things like that.
Yeah.
As far as the horns go, shout out to Eric Hirschhorn. If you know who that is, he plays sax for like Revolution, and he plays for Tribal Seeds. He's the guy with the crazy hair that's usually barefoot on stage, like killing the saxophone.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Um, he's become a good pal of mine, and he played horns on that track. And I think that might be the only one on the record, but we've been collaborating a ton, man. And he's become a good pal of mine, and he's just an incredible musician. So he assembled that horn section and got it all done for us, you know.
Well, again, it's definitely a departure. I love, you know, I love that you included that song, and I love how it sort of like it's just a slight pivot throughout, you know, and a little change in the sound as
Yeah,
you make your way through the album. Um, you know, oh, the song, you know, also speaks to the power of karma, and you know how you get back to, you know, how you get back what you put out into the universe. I'm curious if you're a believer in karma or the golden rule.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, man. I think that's like one of the like that's definitely one of the aspects that I live my life by, you know. So you definitely get back what you put out there 100%.
Yeah, I think those are words to live by. I mean, I'm not religious. You know, I was raised as a Catholic. So you know, I went to that like, you know, Catholic schooling or whatever. Not, just like what do they call it? They call it CCD. It's like your religious
Yeah,
school
yeah.
when you're young. And you know, but the one thing I take from my upbringing, and it's not even a religious thing. I mean, I guess you could say it is just that what they call the golden rules. Like,
Do unto your neighbor.
yeah, do unto others as you want them.
Yeah,
And that's same, it's like our version of karma, right? And so
100%.
I fully believe that is like you got to treat people how you want to be treated. And
Oh yeah.
so all right, let's get into to Mind Control. This is a wicked
Woo-hoo-hoo.
track with profound meaning. It talks about, you know, how we are conditioned from birth to strive for material wealth in a capitalistic society. while the powers that be strive to divide the people and marginalize like large portions of our populace. I mean, I think in recent years, it's become more and more evident that that's happening.
Absolutely.
And you know, and the other recurring message, the other message that it talks about, which is recurring through the album, is denouncing, you know, both mainstream media as well as social media, which I presume is for, you know, spreading misinformation, you know, sensationalizing things, creating panic. So there's a lot to unpack from this song. Just talk about it. Tell me. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. This is another one of those crazy ass songs that I wrote well before the pandemic. You know what I mean? And it definitely took on a new life throughout the pandemic because all these issues are just being like put on the forefront. You know what I mean? With the misinformation and the kind of I don't even know the conditioning, I guess. You know what I mean? And this is a message that's been evident in reggae music for a long fucking time, and it almost never seemed more fitting until the last couple of years, you know. And then everyone wants to look at reggae music and be like, oh shit, like this music is about what's going on now. And you know, I speak as a 29-year-old here, but I think that shit's always been going on, you know what I mean? And that's why I think you listen to these songs of old, you know, these reggae songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, like there's been conditioning in different forms, and maybe it wasn't social media or maybe mainstream news wasn't as crazy and divisive as it is now, but that's been a common theme of reggae music. And ever since I found reggae, like it's shown a light on all that stuff for me, you know, back in 2013, 14, even before then, man, because I was listening to heavy metal, and it's such a common theme throughout metal as well, you know, is system is fucking crazy, and we got to think for ourselves and be our own human beings, you know, and try and distance ourselves from the manipulation that occurs so often, you know. So to me, it was just a testament and a written record of the way I view some of the stuff. And it's crazy, man, because when you put it in a song, it comes out as harsh. It comes out as like, well, I have these firm beliefs that I believe everyone should believe. And it's not that at all. The main message of the song is I think you should think for yourself. You know what I mean? And regardless of what your beliefs are, you know, left, right, whatever, thinking for yourself is so important, man, because both sides of the political system seem to be doing a lot of like conditioning. You know what I mean? It's like if you're so far left, you better subscribe to that ideology 100%, or else you're alienated. And it's the same way on the right, you know. And to be honest, I didn't give a fuck about I still don't give a fuck about politics. But before the pandemic, I was like, I literally paid no attention at all. And then pandemic hits, you kind of have to like pay attention. You know what I mean? But this song was written pre that, and it was kind of just about being your own person and knowing that shit is out there, you know what I mean, and not giving in. Because even before pandemic and shit, I would know people that would watch the news all the time and always live in this constant state of fear or, you know, hatred or whatever, just from what was being fed to them. And it's just come so full circle in the last couple of years, you know. And that's been a real thing, you know. I remember having like concerns about the tune because it was coming out like heart of the pandemic. I mean, we recorded it heart of the pandemic, like July 2020, I think, is when we recorded that one. And I'm just like, this can be interpreted by so many people to just align with their ideology, you know what I mean, and be like, well, I knew the left was mind controlling, or I know the right's mind controlling, you know. It's like, and that's exactly kind of what the song is anti, you know what I mean? It's just that let's try and separate ourselves from our beliefs and our ideologies and just know that everything out there is a form of propaganda. You know what I mean? Everything out there. And I learned that in a psychology class in college. It's like, even if it's like a commercial for deodorant, it's like, if it has an intention, it's propaganda, whether it's positive or negative. Even if it's like donating to charity and it's a commercial for donating to charity, it's still propaganda, even though it has a good intention, you know? It's just, let's be mindful of that shit. And I think, to me, man, that's the most powerful line in the song that kind of crushes down all the things that can be interpreted from it to just like add fuel on the fire of some of these people who are like, oh no, I'm right, you know. The one line, be mindful of how you react, you know what I mean? Be mindful of how you react to mind control, you know.
I do. And in fact, you know, originally we were going to do this interview in a like written communication. And I had called out, you know, like I had excerpted like lyrics, and that was part of the section that I had called out. I mean,
Awesome.
I just love the lyrics in this are amazing.
Thanks, man. I think that's one lyric that can't be misconstrued at all. You know what I mean? No matter who you are, what you stand for, what group you roll with, like, let's be
Right.
mindful how we react. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And
Because this
mindful,
world,
like not just like reacting immediately from the hip, but like take it in, think about it, and react maybe with some diplomacy, rather
absolutely,
than
man.
coming from a place of emotion where you're, saying things that are in a feverish, tone. Um,
Absolutely.
and I do believe, like, a lot of what ails us. I'm not denouncing capitalism necessarily, but I do think that there are a lot of negative things that are a result of our capitalistic society that aren't necessarily driven from the left or the right politically, just
Totally.
the system that we live in. I
That's
mean, we
definitely
are
true.
trained to be materialistic, like from day one, like, like you said, like it says in the song,
Yeah.
and
I agree with that a lot. And I also I don't see a better route. You know what I mean? I, once again, don't know shit about shit. But I think if we're living in this capitalistic society, there's still ways to like use it for good, because it definitely works in terms of like creating a free and independent nation. You know what I mean? But it's like the human ego is the thing that gets twisted up inside capitalism and puts all this bullshit in there and tries to rip people off and, corrupt people and things like that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all about how we're going to react to it, and like, what stance we're going to take, and are we going to use our power or money or whatever for good or for bad.
yeah, I mean, if it can easily breed greed, and so it
Yeah,
takes. I mean, greed is so much behind so much of the problems that plague our society, and
totally.
not only in the United States but throughout the world, and
Oh, absolutely.
so it takes it takes fortitude to sort of, and focus to like not let that be your guiding quest or energy.
100%. I'm gonna get more coffee here.
No problem, no problem. Gotta love it, man. All right, so I'm gonna shift over to the talk a little bit about the song. We all walk our own roads.
Yeah.
This song's touched upon a realization that's crossed my mind from time to time. It's not necessarily a comforting one, but some of us are far more fortunate than others when it comes to like support systems, family, friends, financial
100%.
assets, opportunities, life experiences, all that. But even for those like very fortunate people, I consider myself one of them. Ultimately, though, when it comes down to it, we're all alone in this world. In other words, like even if you have like a sibling that you're close with that's shared the same upbringing and family as you, even if you have a loving spouse or a life partner, you have close friends, but in the end, nobody really shares the unique burden, whatever that may be, that each individual has to bear.
I
And
love that.
and that's occurred to me, and it's a very lonely thought, but it's sort of just the nature of the human existence.
Yeah.
And given that, it's important to establish fortitude, embrace faith, whatever that may be, in order to face the challenges that life is inevitably going to bring you, right? So and the other interpretation I had of this song was that it's sort of like everyone has their own story, and we don't know what that story is, so it's best not to judge other people. I'm
Yeah.
curious what your intentions were behind the song, if you could elaborate on that at all.
Well, first of all, I love that interpretation of it, man. It is very insightful and also lonely and sad, but that's also part of life. It's full spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Um, I guess to me, the way I would interpret it, first of all, the song was I've been trying to fit that line in a song for years, man. Like I remember still living back with my mom many years ago, like when we were first starting the band. As I was a kid, I was just dropped out of college to go on tour and stuff. And I remember sitting there in this little bedroom with my little keyboard, and I had like 5 or 6 different versions of "We All Walk Our Own Roads." I've always tried to turn that into a song. This was the first song that I wrote in the pandemic. I wrote it in like April of 2020. I was right when the pandemic hit. We're all like, let's make a couple weeks, let the sleep schedule get all fucked up. Stayed up like everybody back in those early days, like stayed up till like 2 a.m., which is rare for me, and was waking up at like 12, like noon. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I had to recalibrate my whole sleep cycle. And I started by, waking up at like 5 a.m. just to like get back into, that's when I'm an early riser. So I had to like set an alarm for like a week straight to kind of just be like, okay, like this is getting out of hand. And I remember I got up, I went for a run, and I came back, and my challenge to myself was like to sit outside and play some guitar and try and write some music like early in the morning, like sunrise. And that's when that tune finally clicked. And I was sitting out there on the balcony with my coffee and my guitar. I'm like, oh my God, I finally have like the melody and the way that I can put We All Walk Our Own Roads finally into a song that I like. The big musical inspiration of it behind the melody and stuff is like that guitar line is so similar to the song Drive by Incubus.
Okay.
My wife is like such a big Incubus fan. And in April 2020, I was listening to Morning View so much for whatever reason. I never got into Incubus as a kid. I got into them as an adult, years before that. But I really took a deep dive on that whole record, and I think I was like inspired by the Drive thing. But as far as the message goes, I think it was the realization that it's okay to be on a different path than those that you love. And I think that since I was a kid, I had this kind of like a fantasy idea that like, whatever band I was in at the time, like we're all going to be together for life, and we're all going through the same shit, we're all coming up together. I mean, high school friends, you know what I mean? Everybody in high school, like we're going to be best friends for the rest of our lives. And, that fades away. And I think the message behind that is kind of just, message behind the song is kind of just like coming to terms with the fact that that's fine and that's okay. You know what I mean? And it's special because you don't have to be in exactly align with everybody. And you can just live your own thing, and still have love and respect and appreciation for the people around you, as you kind of navigate your own certain life separately. You know what I mean?
I do. And I like, the story you told about how like, that line or whatever has been like, percolating in your consciousness forever, and you couldn't find like there. I love that when the muse finally strikes, like where
it's tough, dude. It's tough.
Whether it be music or sometimes with writing, like just writing articles, like, and sometimes you have to like mull things over for quite a while, and it just doesn't come. But then all of a sudden when that light goes on, it's like, it's an amazing feeling, right?
Well, it was like that too. And it was, even with the line like We All Walk Our Own Roads, like there's so many interpretations and there's so many ways you can take that song. And I think that was the biggest struggle for me, and that's why it like percolated in the mind for so long, is because I knew I wanted to write a song with those words in it. It was powerful, and like a lot of it came from that euphemism of like, we're all just walking each other home, kind of like that kind of thing, but like we can walk on separate roads. You know what I mean? But I yeah, it was a long time before it clicked to me of like, oh, this is what that idea will blossom into. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, what time is it there? Because I see it's 8 o'clock here. Is it 5 there?
5.
Okay,
5 here, yeah.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know if 6 o'clock was 3 minutes away or
no.
Right,
all good.
Cool. So as we make our way through this, so I want to talk a little bit about Sometimes. This song takes a nostalgic look back into your past, and it tells the story of the band's beginnings in the reggae scene.
Yeah.
So now, given that the band has become, pretty successful nowadays, we have more fans. I've watched Iya Terra over the last, I don't even know how many years it's been, but I remember I've watched you guys progress from the first album and gain popularity and become larger font on the festival posters and all that. Certainly have a big following. Anyway,
well, thanks.
Yeah, but I mean, so seemingly, like given that, like with the band's progress, you would think like life is becoming easier or better. So I'm curious because the song talks about missing the old days. So I'm curious about. I'm going to give you a 2-part question. So I'm curious about what about the old days you miss, and also the song makes reference to everything falling into place, and I know that bands like really strive to catch their big break, which takes them to the next level. So I was hoping you could tell us just a little bit about Iya Terra's backstory, how the band came together, and what you would consider, if anything, was your big break that allowed the band to turn a corner in the reggae scene.
Love that, man. And that's why this is one of my favorite songs off the record, because like I'm a super nostalgic dude. I always have been. I always like cling on to like memories and shit. Like my wife has made me, like, she has asked me to throw away so much shit throughout the years, because I used to just be, oh, save the show ticket, save this, you know, these are the sunglasses I wore, this and that. And then like we need to declutter, like our house is fucking crazy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I
I'm very similar, by the way, and it's always around this time of year, the beginning of the year, that I do like a cleaning, and I finally part ways with certain things. I'm like, yeah, I guess I don't really need that, you know.
100%. Even like old band tees where I'm like, oh, this is like my Nirvana shirt from 7th grade, and it's like, dude, like you haven't worn this, like, you know what I mean? And I'm into nostalgia, man. I love songs that take me to a place, you know, in time. Whether it be my own memory or listening to the artist's memory and just being like, damn, like, you know, I listen to music from the 70s and I'm like transported back into like a cruiser, like rolling around town. You know, I love that shit. I love nostalgic pieces of music. So like for me, the song, and this is another one that I worked many times, because I'm like, I need to find the right words to say. We're talking about a whole life, you know what I mean, up to this point. So it's like, how do you just choose like certain events or memories? And I chose the ones that really had the most meaning to me, you know. And the way I break the song down is like the first verse is about growing up in Vegas, high school, and, you know, like the early years, even pre Iya Terra, because I moved to California when I was 20 years old and started Iya Terra. But before that, you know, I'm a Vegas kid, and I grew up there playing music and hanging out and partying and learning all about, you know, what it means to just grow up in Las Vegas. And so to me, like that whole verse is a letter to my best friends in this life that are still in Vegas, that'll know exactly what I'm talking about when we're talking about listening to Pink Floyd and walking through the desert. And, you know, just it's a testament to good friends and friendships of the past. And then the second verse is definitely about the beginnings of Iya Terra. And those early years, man, of like the first time we cruised up the coast together. And touring was a lifelong dream of mine since I was a kid. I just never, every band that I was in, we got pretty close, and then, you know, everything would whatever. But with Iya Terra, like it was finally achieving this lifelong dream of just getting out there and getting on the road and doing that. And so I just specifically, like, I remember sitting in the van and driving up to, you know, our first couple tours were small. They were just in California. We'd go up to like Sacramento, San Francisco, sometimes like Humboldt County, like the far NorCal drives. And I just remember being in awe that it was really happening to me. And I'm like, finally, like we're on tour. Like we weren't in a tour bus. We were going to go play for like 25 people, you know, but that was like, we were on tour. I could say that, you know?
Yeah.
And looking out at the ocean and just being in a van with, I wasn't the only one that was that stoked. Every fucking soul that was in that van was like, we're doing this, you know, like I'm on tour, like we left college or we left our job or we got time off, and like we're doing something that we've dreamed about, you know? And so that second verse is definitely about that magic in those early years. And then the third verse is kind of about thinking about the future, and also like, I guess, taking a look at nostalgia, because, you know, obviously no one wants to live in the past. You don't want to like think back on the old days. And I think that's a key lyric of the song is, it's like, sometimes I miss those days, you know, because it's not always just like, man, I want to go back. I want to go back. Like this sucks. Now sucks. Like I liked it 2 years ago, you know? It's just, you know, it's like you get in that feeling sometimes where you're like, man, those were some good ass times. And like, I miss them and I love them dearly. But like, I also love the future. I love the possibilities. I love the unknown, you know? And I think the third verse kind of touches on that. And it's, you never know what tomorrow brings, which is, you know, mom's wisdom right there. But here I am doing the same damn thing, and it's taking me back to just early garage band practices, jamming, you know. And I often have that feeling when I'm driving up to rehearsal now. I have an 80-mile drive to rehearsal now, and I'm like, damn, like I'm low key still doing the stuff I was doing at 14. It's just like now it's my career, you know. And like that is a heavy pill to swallow too, just as a human. You're like, you know, when I was doing it as a kid, no one was making any money. It was just a passion thing. And now it's like, holy shit, I still throw a guitar in the car and drive to rehearsal, which is what I used to do as a kid. You know what I mean?
Now you have to do it.
Now I have to do it. And I love it, man. I love it. I'm so grateful and I'm so blessed. And, you know, obviously some days are easier than others, but I am so grateful and so blessed to do what we do. Nutshell of how Iya Terra started. I moved to California. I quit my job and everything. I was 20 in Vegas, living in an apartment with my keyboard player, Luis. You know, me and him both grew up out there together. And I left the band that I was in at the time because it just kind of seemed like things had fizzled out, and kind of was going to just give up my dream of music. I was like a young, dumb 20-year-old, and I was like, man, I'm too old. Like, I missed my shot. I'm 20 years old. And, at that time I was listening to a lot of like core bands, and those bands, like, they really hit it when they were like 19 and they were already touring the world. So here I am at 20 and I'm like, I think I missed my shot, And so I was like, I better go to college or something. I dropped out of high school. I never thought college was in the cards. And somebody was like, hey, like, there's like financial aid, like they'll pay for your college if you're poor. And I'm like, oh, cool, let's go. So I figured that out, and I enrolled in college, and I tried to like go straight and narrow for like 6 months, and chopped all my hair off. I don't know, it was like a coming of age for me, man. Moved to California and like had to like try and start the next chapter of my life, and I didn't know what it was. And it's not that I felt that I had to chop off my hair. When I moved to California, I had this long hair and I looked like a musician and I looked like a rock and roller. But when people asked me what I did, I was like, I go to school, and that was like an identity thing for me. Because at any time before that, someone would ask, what do you do, man? And I'd be like, I'm in a band, check us out.
Yeah.
And so for the first time in my life, I was like, I'm not that. Like, what is this? I don't even have a need for this hair, So I chopped it all off. It was crazy, man. And that lasted all of about 6 months until I went to go see Iration and Pacifier, which were two of my favorite bands at the time and still are. And, I've been playing metal, and I always loved reggae at the same time. I always loved reggae. And I went to this reggae show in Ventura, and I said, you know what, man, I think that I'm going to give that a go. I'm just going to start writing some reggae songs. And I went home that night. I posted an ad on Craigslist for other musicians, and my bass player, Nick Laportio, responded and was like, hey, man, I love the same bands. We should get together and jam. And lo and behold, we did. And it grew into this shit, which is mind blowing to me.
That's awesome. I was curious about that because I know, like, about the metal. You've mentioned the metal background. I was curious, what caused you to pivot from that. Sort of in almost like, I'm sure there's some commonalities in it, but on the surface, it's sort of like musically, it's sort of like the antithesis.
Absolutely.
And so I was curious, what caused that pivot. But as it turns out, it maybe wasn't really a completely a pivot because you were already listening to both.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, man, because I think like the two genres, they are kind of like an antithesis of one another. Music, sonically, because
yeah.
like some of it, like the reggae is meant to chill you out usually, and the metal is usually meant to like amp you up. And I get that, and for someone that's never really fallen in love with both genres, it's a completely valid question, and I get asked it all the time, But when it comes to like the message and the attitude in the music, it's the fucking same. You know what I mean? It's like, without maybe the spiritual element, because reggae is a very spiritual music. Metal is typically not. But another huge aspect in reggae is kind of like rebellion, you know what I mean? And kind of like rejecting certain things in
Sure.
the modern society, and metal is all that, you know what I mean? And both of the genres are kind of going against the grain, and they're both like part of this counterculture, and they're both about just being you loudly, you know what I mean? And like standing up for what you believe in. They're both like that. And I always considered, that's why the phrase rebel music was always like so profound to me, because I'm like, most of the music that I love is rebel music, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And yeah, and that's why, we had to like, specify that sonically they were like opposite ends of the spectrum, but they do share, that's common rebellious motif most of the time.
Very much so, man. And even like there's parts of the sonically thing where they're so aligned too, with just like reggae is all about the groove in the pocket, and like most metal music other than like thrash and like crazy hardcore punk is so groovy, you know what I mean? Like if you put on like Lamb of God, for instance, like they're like the grooviest fucking metal band in the world, that you just sink into the pocket and you just can't help but nod your head. It's like this deep, powerful bass syncopation, and it's like I find it to be very similar in a lot of genres of music, hip hop, like dubstep, like there's just this groove that you just can't help but bob your head to. I'm gonna plug in some lights and see if I can brighten it up out here.
Cool.
I still have you in my ear.
No, that's cool. We can take a pause here, get yourself set up.
I don't know if they're not gonna turn on until it gets a little bit darker, but I had to plug them in.
Sure. So I'm curious though, circling back, just still within confines of discussing this song, as far as Iya Terra goes, was there a certain big break that you guys had that you feel took you to the next level, or was it not as like obvious as that? It was just slow progression, grinding it out over the years, or was there something significant that happened that, you know, you can look back and say that was a very meaningful happening?
It was definitely a little bit of both. Um, it was definitely a slow grind, and it still is. You know what I mean? It's always going to be. We've never been one of the bands that like had a handout or had like this great thing happen. Like one of us gets noticed jamming on the street, and then like some major producer comes and it's like, "Hey man, like I'm gonna make you a star." Like we never had that, and I'm grateful for that. I appreciate the slow grind, you know. But also, I think like when people ask like what our breakout moment was, I always like the first thing that pops into my mind is in 2017, we went on a 10-week tour across the country with Fortunate Youth. Um, and it was the first national tour we had ever done. You know, it was like 60 fucking shows. And so it was like a really powerful thing when you jump out of the van in a new city for the first time that you've never been to. I had never traveled that much. I always was like, I'm going to travel doing music. I always had that dream, you know? And so we would hop out wherever. Denver, never been there. Let's go play a show. Like Boston, never been here. You know, New York City, never been there. Florida, never been to this state. It was such a powerful thing, you know, for us to be like, holy shit, we're here to play music in these new cities. And I think that in our minds kind of just like seared in, like, oh, we love this. We're doing this for life. And that tour gave us a lot of new fans and a lot of exposure just because we had never been to any of those cities and stuff like that. So after that, like I remember we were all working at this moving company, the whole band. We worked at this place called Rock and Roll Movers in LA, where they only hire touring musicians with crazy schedules. So you're like, hey, I'm going to leave for 10 weeks. And they're like, yeah,
so LA,
yeah.
right?
Everyone that works there is an alcoholic. It's terrible. We were like the only kids that were like not burned out Hollywood rock and roll guys still trying to make it in like the Motley Crue era. But like all my coworkers were like 50-year-old dudes with jet black hair. And they were like,
you're lifting the couch with somebody being like, yo, I used to listen to your hair metal band back in the day. You know?
For real. And they're like, man, I was going to make it except fucking Vince Neil fucking took my job in Motley Crue. And you're like, okay, buddy, let's move the couch. We were all working there. And I just remember when we all left for tour, and I remember driving around in the moving trucks and being like, can you believe we're about to go on a tour where like there's going to be people there every night? Because before that, you know, we had done small tours ourselves. Sorry. That's La Habra, man. That's my neighborhood for you. But we were just stunned by the fact that we were given this opportunity by Fortunate Youth, and shout out to them, man, because those guys really, really hooked us up with that tour, man. That was such a pivotal moment for the band. And I just remember everything changed after that, just in the sense of now we started getting like people hitting us up being like, hey man, saw you in North Carolina, love your band. And we were just like, what? Because like before that, as far as it went was like, you know, San Diego and things like that. You know, that was like the furthest our reach went, other than a couple online fans who had just come across us. But now it was like, oh man, if we go to North Carolina to play, there's going to be people that saw us with Fortunate Youth. Like that's a totally different feeling for us. So I always think back at that as the pivotal moment. It wasn't necessarily a big break, like a big gift to us, like, oh, now you're a big star, but it was just, it took us from being an up and coming California band to now being a national touring band, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that it's been like that for other bands as well. I mean, getting on a national tour is huge,
man. And so fun, like so fun for somebody who knows they want to do touring for a living. You know, you're just like, holy shit, we're doing, like when you're in like week 2, you're like, there's still 8 weeks left, man. This thing has no signs of stopping soon, you know?
Well, I mean, you know, you guys are, you know, I don't know about the rest of your bandmates. I assume you're all roughly around the same age, and you know, that's the point in time to do it. Like now I'm advanced from you guys, you know, I'm like probably even be your father, but
nah,
the energy to like to do that, you know, like
I'm getting there, man. And I'm gonna take this opportunity to just announce to the fans, we're only touring 1 week out of the year from here on out, man, because I'm getting fucking old. So sorry.
That won't go over well. That will not go over well.
No, I'm just kidding. But I feel it, man. At that time, you're fucking 21 years old. There's nothing for you at home. You're like, let me just get out of this city and go. But, you know, now, like, a couple of us are married. Like, I'm married now. I'm happily married. I got, like, this great family at home, you know, great wife at home. And so leaving for tour gets harder the older you get, you know? When you're a young 21-year-old, you're like, dude, what kind of mischief can we get into, you know?
Right.
But
you can't wait to go on the road and have all those adventures, and it's a party from like one city to the next or whatever.
Yeah.
And And then like, yeah, but now you have, like you mentioned, cats. Like I know whenever I leave overnight, I miss my cats. I got 4
Oh,
cats.
dude.
And I'm like, I could be gone for 6 hours during the day and I miss my cats. It's
I just
ridiculous.
want to say I love you because you have 4 cats. I have 3.
I swear, man, if I could have more, I would. I love cats so much.
Me
They're
too.
like one of the best blessings in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, leaving the cats is very hard. Leaving the wife, horribly hard, and then the cats are like a close second to that, because I just like, she'll FaceTime me and show me the cats, and I'm just like,
Well, you know, the reality is those little buggers, man, they bring a lot of joy. They really bring a lot of joy.
they're
And
beautiful little, the sweetest and most innocent creatures with not a damn bad bone in their body, man. You know, they're just like pure love and joy.
exactly. And I can just like look at one of my cats like napping and I get like an endorphin rush, you know. I'm just like
Me too.
feeling good about it, you know. So anyway.
I gotta kiss the mouth. I gotta kiss the mouth when I see him napping. I'm like, oh, I'm going in for this right now.
Exactly. Oh, the things we do to our cats is pretty funny. All right, let's talk a little bit about Gone Away. So
Yeah.
this is Nick's song, I believe. You know, he sings about how he's taken time to work on himself and he urges listeners to find your light. So I interpreted the song as lauding the journey of the spiritual search and emphasizing the point that personal growth, it takes work. Am I on point with that, or what are your thoughts? I don't know if you wrote the lyrics or if Nick did.
Yeah. Well, so Nick wrote that song. You know, he wrote all his lyrics. We always write our own lyrics. So if someone's singing it, they wrote it. And you know,
Okay.
that's a common misunderstanding even for like a lot of fans when they're talking about like a feature. You know, like say they're like, oh, did Trevor write his lyrics for the We All Walk Our Own Roads, or did you? And it's, you know, anytime you listen to us, and most artists, if you're gonna have a feature, they're gonna write their own lyrics. I don't really know how like the whole pop spectrum works, but I'd imagine, you know, sometimes they don't write their own lyrics. But with bands like of our caliber and things like that, you're gonna have a guest. No one's really gonna write their lyrics for you. So to answer your question about the main theme of the song, you'd have to ask Nick, just because, you know, he you know, was in his own thing when he wrote that. But he asked me to write a verse for it and asked me if it can be an Iya Terra song. So I kind of wrote my verse in response to what I was getting from his lyrics, you know.
Okay, I got you.
But I do think it's in that vein, man. That's the way I interpret it. Is, you know, growing yourself, working on yourself. It's definitely work. It's definitely work, and it takes time, you know.
That's another aspect of Iya Terra that I appreciate, is the fact that, you know, sort of like the Beatles, right? I don't want to compare you to the Beatles, but you know what I'm saying. Like with like, you know, you have if Nick sings a song, it's got a different feel to it versus songs that you sing, and they're both Iya Terra songs, but they yet have a different vibe to it.
It definitely becomes a thing, you know. If somebody else writes a song, then the rest of the guys and a lot of myself will grab a hold of it and kind of like put it into our wheelhouse, you know. So sometimes, you know, guy write a song and it's really different, but then by the time that the band gets a hold of it, it kind of just becomes Iya Terra sounding, you know.
Absolutely, everybody's got to kind of bring their own little piece to it.
Yeah.
So the song Future, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is it begins with the sort of the subtle sound of birds chirping, which it's not an uncommon thing in reggae music. I can think of like several songs, like a Peter Tosh song, a Culture song, where there's birds in the background. So I'm just curious, like what prompted you to add that sound effect?
Well, it actually comes down to cats yet again. So we moved in May of 2020, like heart of the pandemic. Oh, here comes the lights. First of all, that's my favorite fucking song on the record, Future, hands down. That's, to me, it's my favorite to play, and yeah, love that tune. But that sample at the beginning is important to me too, because we moved in May. We found this little spot that we stay in now, and this house has become like a staple in mine and my wife's life and in our relationship, because this is the house we got engaged in. This is the house we got married in. Like, we've really started to build our lives in this house, you know? And I've always loved this place, man. It's not much, but it's our little humble abode, and I love it dearly. It was the first time in my life I was able to have a whole room to turn into a studio. And I wake up and I look around my place, and it's small, but I'm just like, this is everything I love. You know, everything I love is right here, you know? I've always felt that way. And that's why when I wrote that song, it might've been May or June, but we got a cool little side yard thing here and there's some great bird sounds in the morning. And so I set an alarm and woke up at like 5:30, 6 a.m. one morning and just stuck a microphone out the window and recorded it. Because that song, like the message of the song is, you know, similar to some of the others, but more so like about taking the next step in life and like turning to the next chapter, you know. And that's a lot of what this house has been for us. Was it was the beginning of a new chapter, and I wanted to encapsulate all that was happening in life at that time, you know, moving and going through this pandemic and figuring out what comes next and what comes next with the wife. You know, I knew I was going to propose and stuff like that. So it was like a lot about new chapter, and I wanted to remember the sounds too of what was going on at that time. So woke up early, stuck a mic out the window, and it was in June. I wrote that song in June because we got our second cat, Susie, in June of 2020, and she was a little kitten, and she was in the studio. And if you listen in, it's like 3 seconds into the song, there's a little tiny baby meow, and it's Susie, and she was like fucking like 11 weeks old. So there's like birds, 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 and then you hear her go meow, and it's just like, I was like, yes, because you can't force that. She was like sleeping, you know, she was like a little baby 11-week-old kitten, and she just meowed as I was recording birds, and I was like, fuck yeah, let's go.
I'm gonna be listening for that now. I'm gonna be
You can't unhear it, man. I originally, when we brought that song to the studio, I had brought that recording with me, you know, and it was like longer. It might have been like 10 seconds of birds and then a little Susie, but Ian was like, let's get straight to the point. So he like, there's like 2 seconds of birds, then a Susie, and then the song starts.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's talk about All Life. So this song is powerful. You know, it takes a pretty firm stand against eating animals, while imploring listeners to have empathy. And obviously, Mike Love is a great choice as a guest vocalist as a feature, you know, collaborator on the track, as he's been very outspoken about his own veganism. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, you know, how that collaboration came to pass, and anything else you want to add about, you know, that awesome song.
Totally, man. Well, this is one of the songs too where you're like, should I release this? Like, do I want to take the fucking hardest stance I possibly can? Because I am not trying to judge a goddamn soul. You know, I'm not trying to judge any human being, let alone our fans out there that eat meat and enjoy eating meat. You do your own thing, you know what I mean? But to me, this was like such a bucket list song, man. I'm such a big Mike Love fan. And, you know, we had Ian produce the record, who's also like a militant, outspoken vegan. And as far as I'm concerned, that's like the goddamn powerhouse of like reggae vegan dudes like putting a song out, you know. So
Yeah,
big bucket list to me, because I always wanted to do a vegan song with Mike Love, and then to have Ian work on it too was just like, oh man, this is like, we have to do this, you know what I mean? Not even everyone in our band is vegan, you know, so it's like I respect them for being like, yeah, I'm still down to put this out and stand behind the message here. But you know, as always, I'm careful in my word choice, because I wanted it, and I love that Mike dropped the line, I'm not judging you, in the song.
I was gonna say that he does say like, we're not judging you, but we're at the same time imploring you to consider this.
Consider, man. And trust me, man, it's like there's this process of veganism too that like I wrote that song many years ago and was just waiting for the right time, you know. And there's like kind of a process with how a lot of veganism works, at least in my own opinion, where your first year or two being a vegan, you kind of feel like you saw the monster under the bed and you're trying to wake everybody up and tell them like, hey man, like this is it's like your top list of priorities, you know. The same way a lot of people have got all sorts of bent out of shape about all sorts of political things, because for the first time ever, they're realizing that the government lies. And you're like, okay, bro, we've known that for a long time. Like, I know it's new information to you, but like, let's hold our composure here. And, you know, but it's the same way with veganism. And, you know, my first couple of years, it was all about enlightening people, telling people, oh man, like you got to be vegan. You can't eat meat. It's so cruel. And, you know, with anything else, you realize that that's not the way to teach people and to show people that you're happy with a lifestyle choice. The best way to convince anyone to do anything is show them that you're happy because you're doing it, and that you don't care if they do it or not, but you would like them to see that you found joy in it, you know? So like not judging people is a very important factor in that song, you know? And yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. I'm sorry if any of our meat eating fans are like, fuck this song, but like there's a skip button for a reason, you know. I don't want to make anyone feel guilty at all, because we all have our shit, man, and so there's no judgment at all on that tune. It is funny though.
Okay.
It's funny how it's interpreted, man. And one thing I never fucking realized, one of my main concerns in releasing it was like, oh God, like we recorded that song in the summer when everyone was like, all lives matter. And I was like, we're not going there. Do not fucking turn the song into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought of that one. The one interpretation that I didn't think of was a pro-life stance, which I got on the internet. Someone was like, is this a pro-life song? Like, is he talking about pro? And I'm like, okay, the fuck it, listen to the other lyrics. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
clearly
context
talking about
means something.
yeah, 100%. Like, and I get it. If you listen to the chorus, you can definitely interpret it that way. I'm gonna go inside, dude. It's so dark out here. I don't want this
Yeah.
to be shit quality. But yeah, that's definitely one of the interpretations that I didn't think of. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a great chuckle out of it. I was like, oh shit. Well, promise you, I'm not pro-life. So
No, that's actually interesting. That didn't occur to me.
yeah,
But again, like we've discovered in our conversation, these lyrics can just, you never know how people are going to interpret things, and what it's interesting that they would take that like little those two words together, all life, and all of a sudden, it's
I knew that one was gonna be a shit show for what it's worth. I definitely knew that one was gonna be a shit show, and I'm grateful, man, because like there's definitely some like fringe fans that are like, what the fuck? But then like the majority of people are like, fuck yeah, cool. He's got a message and he likes to sing about it. And that's like, to me, what music is all about. You know what I mean?
I honestly, I have a lot of admiration for vegans. Now, I'm a huge animal lover, as you can tell. But I also I love to eat meat. I'm a carnivore. So what I do aspire one day to go meat free. But for the time being, I think what I'm trying to do, because I live in a house with my fiance and her two kids, and she's vegetarian. They don't want any part of not eating meat, right? So we still have to cook for them. So it's like kind of, anyway, my point is that what I've done is just eat a lot less meat. And
once again, man, it comes down to mindfulness. That's all it is. You know what I mean? Like, let's not just be unconscious and unaware of what we're eating. Like, even if no one goes vegan here in the song, at least maybe they're going to be like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Like, that animal does have a life and is a sentient creature, so like, eat your meat, do whatever, but let's at least try and be mindful. That's like the whole message of a lot of the stuff, whether it be political or vegan or whatever.
I do. I also believe, as a not as an alternative to veganism, but as a meat eater, you can also be a conscious meat eater. And like I feel better about eating animals that are raised, that have had a good life, right? Like raised on a farm, not like in a stall, and like free range animals like, so anyway, that's just another like something that somebody could do if they want to be a more conscious consumer.
On that tip, it's like you got to be aware too of what the labels say, because it's like anything else where corruption comes into play. So it's like, you often hear the hot words thrown around, like, free range and cage free and stuff like that, but it's kind of like all the shit that we're seeing with like pharmaceutical industry and CDC and stuff is like there is certain like loopholes you can take just to throw a label on something. We'll be like, well, yeah, but it is approved, or it is this or that, and it's like they just skirt around it to where it's like, oh, now we can say that. But also on the other end of that tip, I agree with you. One of the best conversations I've ever had in my life was we were playing a show in Alabama, and I was hanging out around the fire backstage, and it was freezing cold, and security guards and everything had this big fire, and I was just hanging out, and one of the security guards was talking about how he just finished a hunting trip, and he had a buck in the back of his truck, and waiting to go home and like, fix it up or whatever. And I didn't tell him I was vegan. I just started picking his brain and just started asking him all this stuff about, why he hunts and like what he loves about it and what he's learned from it and, what is there to gain. And he told me all this really great stuff, which I've heard since then from different people about how, it's like a way to get in touch with nature. And it's obviously, even as a vegan sitting here, it's far better to like go out and get an animal yourself, because you're paying it at least a due respect of like understanding the gruesome violence that does happen when killing something and consuming it. At least you're experiencing it firsthand, so you're well conscious and well mindful of the impact of your habits. But it was one of the most powerful conversations I ever had. We talked. I learned everything I know about hunting from that one guy. I don't even know his name, but and then at the end, I said, you know what, man? So I'm going to blow your mind really quick. I'm fucking vegan. And this is like a down south Alabama hunting boy that works security. And he was like, no shit, man. Like, that's fucking, I thought you guys were all crazy. And I was like, I thought you guys were all crazy. And he's like, oh, no shit. And we're like, we became friends, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's where it's like, it's mindfulness, it's understanding, it's compassion, it's empathy. It's like, you have to understand the context of everything, and hold no judgment towards others, man, because we're all fucking figuring it out, you know?
So, but I just want to wrap up one last thing about this song. How did you end up collaborating with Mike Love? Was that like, how did that come about?
I've been a fan for a long time, man. I used to go to his shows and like bring him a crystal every time I saw him. Like, Mike, dude, big fan, playing a small band. Like, let's tour together sometime. And you know, eventually he took notice. We had played enough shows together and festivals and stuff, and so we had become kind of buddies. And I had sent him the song, and he was like, "Yo, this is my favorite Iya Terra song. I fucking love this. I love, you know, obviously he is a very outspoken vegan, and he was like, let's fucking do this, you know."
Awesome.
So it was a no brainer for him. And then I was like, Ian's producing it too, so he'll sprinkle more vegan magic on it, and we'll go hard. Yeah,
The vegan trifecta.
yeah,
All right, so we're getting through there, man. We're getting through there.
yeah,
Outer Space. So for obvious reasons, this song, you know, sort of reminds me of David Bowie's Space Oddity, tale
yeah,
of someone like traveling into the cosmos. But I find I interpret the song less literally and more figuratively, sort of as someone like that's bidding farewell as they prepare to transcend from this life to what's next.
yeah,
And with that interpretation, the song really, I get choked up when I'm listening to it. Because it just gives me like, that's the sort of the context that I put it in.
yeah,
And I know, like, you know, that Stick Figure is a collaborator. Scott's a collaborator on the song. He doesn't sing on the song, I don't believe. So, but musically, you know, it does sound kind of like a Stick Figure Iya Terra collaboration. So I
yeah.
assume, you know, his contributions were in the production or writing. Could you just speak a little bit about that song and his contributions to it?
Totally, man. So the song, it definitely, like, I have, you know, there's some of our friends out in Florida. They had a dear friend pass away, and they played the song at his funeral and stuff. And like, you know, it can be powerfully interpreted as like a song about transcending literally from life into the afterlife, you know, definitely. But I think when I wrote the song, I'm just in a place of like, more so, just that feeling that we all have sometimes of like wanting to get away. You know what I mean? Like, it was really just about that. Like, sitting in your car alone at night, like smoking a joint or whatever, and just being like, man, I wish I could just like fly up into there and be like, just, you know, just me and myself and the universe, you know? Definitely try to capture that essence. Sorry, I'm going to plug my charger in real quick.
No, it's all good.
This
I
is
like
definitely
that
the
room.
most in-depth. Thanks, man. This is the studio, and the clothing laboratory now.
Yeah.
This is definitely the most like in-depth I've talked about the album, for sure, hands down. But yeah, so I wrote that tune, and I knew it was a powerful one. Like when I first wrote it, I saved the project. And it's funny, man, I wrote it in our old apartment where I used to have a studio. My wife cleared out the walk-in closet for me, so I was like in this little closet with my keyboard, and it's been a process, you know. But I knew that was a powerful one, and I wanted to like do something with it. I saved that song as Unknown BSE, and BSE stood for Best Song Ever. In my little fast, I was like, yo, this is fucking boom, like, save this. And then, like, you know, I wrote it and I kept working on it. I got it down. I had sent it to some of the guys at Ineffable after it was like at a listening place, and I was like, yo, check this song out. And then we played Dry Diggins one year, and Stick was there, and we were hanging out after, and we were like in a friend's trailer and drinking and shit. And I was like, yo, let me show you this new tune. And I played it, and he was like, it's really cool, man. It's really cool. And then I think, you know, time went by, he kind of like forgot about it. But then he was walking around Ineffable, and he like heard it echoing from someone's like speaker. He heard it coming from Adam's speaker. And he was like, yo, what is that? Like, I've heard that before. It was like in his subconscious. He like sat down and listened to the whole tune. And then he texted me and he was like, yo, like, this song is powerful, man. Like, let's do something. I was like, do you want to produce it, man? And he was like, oh, absolutely. So it went through that process of us sending it back and forth. It was like height of the pandemic. I didn't go up there. I was scheduled to go up there, but it was right when shit was going crazy. So I was like, let's just do it remote, you know? So I'm in my studio, he's in his, we're sending stuff back and forth, and it took a while to get everything dialed in. And you know, I think we got it to a cool place where he was able to put that Stick Figure sound on it, and
Yeah.
really help it, and just getting it out there, you know?
For sure. And yeah, I'm like I said, that's It's a song, another song that sort of induces chills or just brings emotions. Like I said, I've been like riding my bike listening to the song and like find myself like crying,
Well,
you know, like
thanks, man. I feel that way about that song too, and it's tough too, because like that's where like it comes down to like the Iya Terra being so eclectic thing is like, and that song was released as its own single before the album, so it's like for me it was so hard to like, how do you sandwich that song in between All Life and Forwards Bound, because it's like such a different like it's such a different thing. And just grateful that our fans have like like I don't even know the right word, but like they have the palate to be able to like ingest these different feelings and different moods, because they're drastically different, and we haven't even played that song live but like 3 times because it's such a ballad. I mean, it's a 6-minute song, so we just did 10 weeks of 311, and it's like we have a 30-minute set. Like, are we really going to play a fucking 6-minute slow sad ballad banger? Like, no, you know what I mean? We got to come out swinging
in that atmosphere. It's like
We're,
I'm a huge fan of the band Fish, and I see a lot of Fish shows, and the majority of the shows are like super upbeat, but then every once in a while like they'll play like a song that's like that really tugs on your heartstrings, like saying goodbye to someone who's died, and or there's a few songs that I'll sit there and I'll be like weeping in the middle of the show, and and some fans get like really like annoyed, like,
oh, I gotta go get a drink right now.
or it's like My Bathroom Song or whatever, and they're partying. But I kind of like appreciate that roller coaster. I appreciate it's an opportunity for us to not only revel in all the joy that the music's bringing, but also to get in touch with like some of those more vulnerable feelings. So
well, you're a true and keen music lover, man. You definitely know how to take it in. The fact that you can love like the crazy in your face, positive, happy songs, but also be able to like dive deep into like a 6-minute ballad and sit there, and probably if you're a Fish fan, much longer than 6 minutes, and be able to enjoy the atmosphere that it takes to like get into an emotion like that, because you kind of can't convey something like that in like a 2.5-3 minute song.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. But and it doesn't make sense like in a half an hour long set, right? You're not gonna, like you said, drop it there. But
we're definitely rocking it on the headliner, and I'm really excited to say this because we're just starting to work on the headline set. But I'm pretty sure I'm bringing out a piano to play that song on, like, first time playing piano on stage. So hoping
that'll be awesome.
Really excited.
So let's, you mentioned the next song, which is Forwards Bound, the collaboration with Steel Pulse, and I was actually listening to it today as I was riding my bike, and
nice, man.
It was the thing is, it's like, this is such a Steel Pulse song,
Yeah,
it's got the tempo of a Steel Pulse song, and I love the lyrical deliveries, the vocal deliveries, I mean, of whether it be, I guess, David or I think Selwyn, does he sing a verse?
Selwyn and Amlock, the bassist. Yeah.
Okay, and it's like, and then of course you. I mean, that must have been a thrill to collaborate on this anti-oppression anthem. What are your thoughts on that? I'm assuming it was all done remotely.
Yeah, it was done remote. A lot of those guys, they live all over the place, mainly the UK, but I think David was out and about. And I mean, honestly, man, any reggae band will tell you that it was such a dream come true. And I still have to like slap myself like, do we fucking really do a song with Steel Pulse? Like that band is godfathers, true, like in the fullest form of respect, man, like godfathers of this genre. And honestly, pioneers of music as a whole, regardless of genre, so the utmost respect to those guys. And to be able to collaborate was fucking insane. And it happened all part by part. Selwyn was the first guy to send some stuff back, and then David sent stuff in, and then Amlock took a hold and was like, let me MC on the song. And we're like, I don't know. And then he fucking murdered it, doing all like the MC stuff. And yeah, I'm grateful for that song, man. I think it sounds like a Steel Pulse song in the tempo, but also I think in kind of like there's a playfulness to it too, where it's like, there's some like really orchestral kind of melodies, and like Steel Pulse to me has always like have had a huge box of tools, like they'll throw in random synthesizers and instruments and be able to incorporate like this cool kind of theatric sound into the song. And so that's why I was like, I definitely want to like experiment with some of that.
Absolutely. The line Steel Pulse alongside I
bro, when we heard that, we were like, what the like, I never thought I would hear that on an album, let alone just hear that in my life, And I'm so grateful to those guys, man, because all of that started with friendship. we did a whole summer with those guys. We did like 8 weeks or 9 weeks, whatever it was, with them and Tribal Seeds out on the road in summer of 2018. And they were just nothing but so loving to us. I mean, they were on our bus. They would invite us to their bus, just talk story about what it was like coming up playing reggae music in the 70s. And those guys are rock stars, man. They're like true reggae rock stars that have like, that's the highest of the heights you can get to. You know what I mean? Like there's rumors that Steel Pulse was Bob Marley's favorite band. Like that's, it's wild. They've got,
deservedly so.
Yeah.
I mean, they've churned out some downright masterpieces, you know.
Oh, come on,
from the
man.
first album forward, you know. I think Rootfire did a whole deep dive into their first album. But you know, yeah, I mean, they are just their harmonies, their and their message, everything about them. But I just love that song like is definitely a Steel Pulse sounding song.
I definitely wanted to bring it in that wheelhouse. It didn't start out that way. Luis wrote like the chords and the groove of that song, and then I took it and kind of molded it. But when it first started out, we just were kind of jamming the groove, you know, not really even knowing what it was. And then someone was like, dude, what about Steel Pulse? And then once that seed was planted, it was like, oh, Steel Pulse. And so we started adding these things that were like inspired by Steel Pulse, you know?
Excellent.
Yeah.
I got a couple more questions. You have like another few more minutes? We're good, or we gotta go?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Okay.
No, we're good. I have a band meeting in a couple minutes, but we can definitely finish.
All right, cool. So really I just want to ask about the last song, and then I want to ask about the artwork. So
Yeah.
Take Control. It's another banger that warns people against getting misled by false information and snared by the evil algorithm, social media, and so forth. So you know, I feel like this is a message, especially these days, that really can't be delivered enough to people. I guess what would be you know, your advice to people as far as, you know, how to avoid getting sucked into that trap, you know?
Just do you, baby. Just keep your eye on the prize. Make sure you're being a good human being and trying to navigate this crazy ass life with doing as little harm as possible to those around you and trying to add something good to the world. You know what I mean?
I do. I appreciate it. All right. So
Yeah.
for the last song, I'm going to do this. I mean, for the last question.
Yeah.
Do this. How about this?
All
dude?
right. Look at that shit.
So I wanted to ask about the artwork. As I had like written when I composed the question, I said the album artwork is interesting, and I suspect riddled with symbolism. So I was hoping you could shed a little bit of light on that. You know, who did the artwork, and if there's anything that you want to, you know, say about the artwork.
Yeah, so shout out to Michael Cortada, the artist behind all the album design. He's one of my favorite dudes in like the metal, post-hardcore rock world. And that's why I reached out to him. I mean, I'm such a fan. I try and lace that shit up in our music as much as one can without like alienating fans too much. You know what I mean? And I just, it was a lifelong dream for him to do our album artwork, and I just let him have free reign. The one symbolism that I wanted to add in there was the two doors with the flames on the side, and then obviously the one towards the back with the sunset, which, you know, if you open up the physical CD, the entire inside is that sunset expanded upon. So it's kind of like the front of the album is the doorway to, I don't even want to say enlightenment, that's cheesy, but like that's the fucking path forward. You know what I mean? It's like you have all this darkness all around you. So that's kind of the concept of the album, you know, and it goes back into the name too, but there's all this evil, wicked shit around you. There's fire, there's like dead trees, there's snakes like trying to reach out. I wanted it to kind of like have this 3D thing too. That's what I told him. I was like, I wanted to have like, it's almost trying to engulf you in it, you know? And if you stay the straight and narrow, you end up into that path of light, you know? And then when you open the album, you've reached that safe space. You know what I mean? You've reached that light that is at the end of the tunnel. So that was a symbolism that I wanted to put. And the only thing about that was like, well, the album is called Ease and Grace. So like it totally could have been like a zenned out album, you know what I mean? But my interpretation of it is like with Ease and Grace, like almost goes back to what you're saying. You know, we all start at different points, and some people are given a life that's easy, but the majority of people are actively trying to cultivate a life that is full of ease and grace. You know what I mean? And it takes work, and it takes passing through all of this dark shit and all these trials and tribulations in order to achieve the ease and grace. It's not just a given. It's not like breath, which is a given. You're born, and we can breathe. We're alive. We have to actively search for it. We have to actively try and create ease and grace within our lives. So that's what I wanted the cover to be, is like the challenges, the trials, but we're working towards ease and grace. And that's why you open up that record and you found it.
That is fantastic. I am so glad I asked, because that really, like, that is like the perfect answer. And I get that from the cover. Is this on, forgive me for asking, but is this available on vinyl?
It is, but it's taken fucking forever, obviously, because the backups and all that stuff, but also like the first test press that they sent us was not good. Like, the levels were bad. It was like crackling. And so we had to go back in and have Ian like kind of remaster it for it to sound good on that platform. So they are approved now. We have approved the second pressing, and it's coming. So the vinyls will be available soon.
Well, I definitely got to grab one of those. But that's great to hear, not only for the fact that vinyl's awesome, but also because you really get to showcase that artwork, which obviously is kind of lost on a streaming. When you're just
totally
have that little album cover on Spotify or whatever on the Bandcamp page. But
and it looks fucking crazy, man. A lot of people are like, "Holy shit, what, this album artwork's crazy," and I'm like, I know, but I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Nate, thank you so much for all the time you've spent today. Really a pleasure talking to you, and I think it'll be great for fans to get a little insight. As I said, kind of peek behind the curtain behind this amazing album. And I can't wait for the vinyl. I can't wait for future Iya Terra releases, and to see you guys out on a stage sometime soon during the warmer weather. Hopefully, we'll get outside. Yeah.
Yeah, man. My pleasure, man. Honestly, thank you so much.
All right, brother. Take care, buddy.
Yeah, dude.
All right. Cheers.